As-salamu Aleikum, hope you're all doing well, inshallah. Today we are going to dive into the story of Zainab, the daughter of the Prophet ﷺ, and specifically we are going to talk about the love story between her and her husband, the story of love, devotion, patience, all of that, inshallah, we are going to dive into. So grab a beverage if you'd like one, and let's jump into the story, inshallah. I'm diving into this book, Stars in the Prophet's Orbit. It's a book that's full of different people who were around the time of the Prophet ﷺ and stories about them, and it's written in a very nice, digestible, simple way, captivating way, inshallah. So if you're looking for a story of those people, the companions and people around the Prophet ﷺ, I'll link this down below, inshallah, if you're interested. So today we're looking at Zainab, the daughter of the Prophet ﷺ. And where do we begin? So, as we mentioned, she's the daughter of the Prophet ﷺ. She's also the daughter of Khadija عنها. Now, she ended up marrying her cousin known as Al-Aas, and this is where the story begins. So, they're living together, happy, in peace, stable, everything is good, and they have children. Many years pass, and then suddenly the Prophet ﷺ gets the first revelation. And this is where Islam begins. So of course, Zainab radiallahu anha, as the daughter of the Prophet ﷺ, she knows her father, she knows he's honest, trustworthy, and all of that. So she believes him right away. Revelation comes down, she believes in Islam, she believes that he's a prophet, she believes in Allah, she believes in all that. Now, on the other hand, her husband did not embrace Islam. So this is where really the differences started to come about. Zainab and her husband, they had a really good relationship, and she loved her husband dearly. He was so good to her. He was really honest, sincere, very good to her. They had a good relationship. But this was something very difficult for her to deal with, because she wanted her husband, of course, to be on the same page with her, for them to be embracing the same faith, raising their children in the same way. And so she, you can imagine, felt stuck between the two, right? Between her father and his faith, which she is following, and then her husband, who is not embracing her father's message, right? So it's a difficult position to be in, and this position lasted years and years and years. So she was always hoping and praying and trying to convince him, but he was not open to it. And the main reason that he was not open to it is not because he didn't think the Prophet ﷺ was truthful or something. No, he actually told her that your father is not to be accused, and there's nothing dearer to me than to believe in him. But, on the other hand, I fear that the people will say that I have abandoned my ancestors for the sake of my wife, to please my wife. So he thought that the people, the Arabs around, would see him as very weak and just betraying them and betraying his ancestors and everything that they had believed in, just to please his wife. So, you know, his manliness or his manhood was at stake, right? So that was what was preventing him from sincerely believing and accepting Islam, was what the people would say and think and his image and so on. So that stopped him from accepting Islam. Now imagine 13 years pass, and it's time for the Muslims to migrate from Mecca to Medina. So the Muslims are leaving, they're moving, picking up their things, going to Medina. She has to make a decision, right? She's Muslim, but her husband isn't. So what does she do? The Muslims are moving to Medina. Does she go with them? Does she leave her husband behind? Or does she stay behind to be with her husband, to be with her children? So she ultimately made the decision to stay behind. She requested permission from the Prophet ﷺ if it was okay, if she would stay behind, and they were fine with it. So she ended up staying behind to be with her husband. Now note, at this point, there was no law that she as a Muslim could not be married to a non-Muslim. This law was not put in place yet. This law or this order was not revealed yet, so it was okay for her to be with her husband at this point. Then, a couple of years later, the Battle of Badr happens. So when the Battle of Badr happens now, the Muslims are against the Meccans or the Quraysh, and there is a battle that ensues, right? What happens in this battle? The Prophet ﷺ is taking part, Abu Al-Aas, Zainab radiallahu anha's husband, is taking part. So now she has her father and her husband on opposite sides in this battle. She is fearful for both sides, right? She's concerned for both sides. She's in the middle. So the battle takes place, and after the battle is over, of course, she asks about her father and about her husband. She doesn't know if they're okay. She gets the news that the Muslims were victorious, that her father, the Prophet ﷺ, is okay, but she also gets the news that Abu al-As is taken captive by the Muslims. So Quraysh was allowed to exchange money to release these prisoners. Now, Zainab, of course, she wanted to free her husband from being a captive, so she looked for something that she could give. The only thing that she could find to give was this necklace that her mother, Khadija radiallahu anha, had given to her. It was such a precious thing to her, but she really wanted to have her husband back at home and to free him. So she ended up sending this necklace to be given as a ransom in exchange for her husband. So now imagine the scene. The Prophet ﷺ is receiving different things, different money, going through it and releasing captives according to what somebody gave for that captive to be released. And then all of a sudden he sees this necklace, right? And he knows this necklace. He remembers this necklace. He knows that it is his wife Khadija radiallahu anha's necklace. His wife, who had passed away, is no longer there with him. And so he became overcome with emotion. You can imagine just seeing this necklace, him holding her necklace. He became overcome with emotion. So the companions saw this. They saw the emotion. They saw the state that he was in. And of course his heart to give that necklace that belonged to his wife who had passed away, that was very difficult. So he asked the companions if they saw any way possible where they were okay freeing Abu al-As, because the Prophet ﷺ trusted Abu al-As, that he was honest, he was not a bad person, he was not going to do anything bad. If the companions saw a way that it would be okay for them to free Abu al-As, but also to return this necklace back to Zainab. And the companions, right away, they said, yes, yes, O Messenger of Allah, yes, that's totally fine with us. So he didn't make the decision on his own. He asked his companions to make sure that they all thought that it was fair for him to do so, and he requested that of them so that they were all aware of that, and they said, okay, yes, free him and return the necklace to her. Now, at this point in time, there were verses revealed that forbade a Muslim woman from marrying a non-Muslim man. So when the Prophet ﷺ freed Abu al-As, he talked to him privately and took an oath from him and said to him basically that you are free to return to Mecca, but would you send Zainab here to Medina, because Allah has ordered and forbade that a Muslim woman be with a non-Muslim man. So he took this promise from him before he was sent to Mecca. Of course, this was very difficult for both of them. The love between them was strong. So Abu al-As, who was known to be a very honest man who kept his word, he went back to Mecca and told Zainab that she had to go to Medina. Zainab, you can imagine, it was very difficult for her to do so, but she still chose to follow Allah's command, and she went to Medina. And the Prophet ﷺ thought highly of both of them. He would say about Zainab that she suffered for his sake. He praised her because she went through so much for his sake. All of this tension and patience and separation from her husband for the sake of the Prophet ﷺ, for the sake of Allah, for the sake of Islam. And he would also praise Abu al-As and say that he was truthful, he was honest, he fulfilled his promise. Now, a few more years pass and we are in the 6th year after Hijrah. Still, Abu al-As is not Muslim. Zainab is hoping, praying. She didn't get remarried, she didn't do anything. She still had hope. Her love for her husband Abu al-As was strong. Neither one of them remarried, and in the 6th year after Hijrah, Abu al-As was traveling for trade. Again, he was a merchant. He was known to be very honest, so many of the wealthy men in Mecca would trust him with their finances, with their money, to go and trade and so on. Now, when he was On his way back to Mecca, there was all this tension. They were kind of on an ongoing war, right? The Muslims and Quraysh and so on. So on his way back to Mecca, the Muslims captured the caravan that he was in, and they captured the wealth, the money, everything. It's said that he was able to get away or flee, and he went to Medina, asked around for Zainab's house, went to her house and asked for asylum. So it was a custom among Arabs before Islam to grant asylum to somebody who requested it, and everybody had to respect that if somebody accepted to grant them asylum. So in this case, Zainab accepted to grant him asylum and grant him protection. So what happens? The Prophet ﷺ at this point doesn't know yet that this happened. He goes to pray Fajr at the mosque. They are there in the mosque, and all of a sudden you hear a voice call from the back of the mosque saying, "I have granted asylum to Al-Aas." So somebody is announcing this. Who is it? It's Zainab radiallahu anha. Now the Prophet ﷺ, this is the first he hears of it, right? So when he finishes the prayer, he turns to the companions and he says, "Did you hear what I heard?" And then they say, "Yes, we heard it too." And then he tells them that, I swear to you all that this is the first time I hear it. Like, I didn't know about this before then, right? I was not part of this plan. I was not in on it. Like, this is the first time I'm hearing it too. So they accepted to grant him asylum. Now, the Prophet ﷺ then said that, okay, we are granting him asylum. Now it is up to you, Muslims, since you took money from him when you captured the caravan. It would be a good gesture from you to return his money, but also if you choose to keep it, then it is your right. So he left it in their hands to make a decision. So the companion said, "We will return the money to him." So they returned everything to Al-Aas, and this money was not even belonging to Al-Aas, right? It belonged to other wealthy men and people in Mecca that trusted him to take the money to trade with it, right? So now they returned this money to him. And of course, Zainab is still hoping that he becomes Muslim, but he doesn't. And he takes the money and he decides to go back to Mecca. He goes to Mecca and he gives all the money back to the rightful owners. So everybody that gave him money, he returns what they gave him. And then he asked them, "O Quraysh, have you taken all your money? Do I owe anybody anything? Is there anything else? Have you all taken what is yours?" And they said, "Yes, we witness, we have taken what is ours." And then he tells them, "Then listen to what I'm about to say. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا رسول الله." And he took his shahada there. And he said, "I swear by God that what had stopped me announcing my Islam in Medina was the fact that you might think that I took your money. But now, since I have returned your money, now I am standing here and proclaiming my faith." So after all these years, 20 years, he finally accepted Islam. And it was a result of the continuous different acts of kindness and honesty and integrity and so on that he saw from the Prophet ﷺ, from the companions, from the people. So he was finally ready at this point to embrace Islam. Finally, his heart opened with love for Islam. And finally, the day came that Zainab was waiting for. It took 20 years. 20 years of her being patient, devoted, praying, hopeful, and finally her husband comes back and he has accepted Islam. Unfortunately, this did not last very long, as Zainab shortly after that passed away in the 8th year after Hijrah. So they barely spent a year together as Muslims. That is the story of Zainab and Al-Aas. Zainab عنها had to have so much tolerance and patience to be living in between two people from different worlds, accepting different things, and she was patient, she remained loyal, she remained dedicated to Allah, and she remained hopeful to Allah all those years. And that is the end of the story. I hope that you enjoyed the story, inshallah. Let me know if you like this style of stories and learning about the people around the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Subhanallah, it's a reminder that, you know, even the people around the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they had their struggles, they were human, they had their emotions, they had the different journeys that they went through, and there's so many lessons that we can take from reflecting over their stories and their journeys. Inshallah, I hope that you found benefit in this story, and until next time, As-salamu Aleikum.